I'm here. Really, I am. What's up, folks? How y'all doing? I hope you had a good Halloween, a good safe Halloween, and a good, how do you say it? What a Day of the Dead. So I hope everybody's having a good evening, had a good night so far, and have a good Sunday tomorrow. What's up? How's everybody doing? It looks like three of us. Tonight I'm going to do one. It's about 2 years old. It's Mysterious Mystical Mysteries, Portals, Caves, and Strange Disappearances. Hello, Vixen Doe. Good morning to you too. Mr. Latro, how are you doing? I hope you are well. Let me get back to it. Out of the darkness. I hope you folks doing good. Thank you for showing up. Y'all probably start a little early. It's about, I think, like 45 minutes. Well, about 43, because I depends on how much rambling she does at the end. But yeah, it's only 2 years old, so there probably won't be a whole lot. Everybody have a good Halloween, or however you say it. I know I am having some issues talking, so just bear with me. My voice is kind of up and down, and words are getting kind of hard some days. So just bear with me. But yeah, I'll probably start at about 15 after or so. Anything exciting going on in the world? Here, it's been crazy. A lot going on with Pop, so I'm just trying to maintain. Plus, I'm trying to get ready for winter, and if the way things going right now, I better start stocking. I'm pretty stocked up now, but I want to make sure everything's working. So I've been cleaning up, doing the yard work, trying to make sure everything's caught up enough so when we're trapped inside, we don't have too much to worry about. And that's about it. I'm going to try to get him out either tomorrow or one day this week. He wants to go down and see if he can find his family's or his grandfather's old farm down in the thing, so I can spend time with him. It's just been working. Those have been two things. I get a little break time in the afternoon, and a little break a little bit before I go to bed. But yeah, I got a lot of things to finish. I got to get your stuff out, Vixen. I got somebody else's stuff they need to get out. So it's like craziness. But yeah, anything exciting? Anything going on? Latros, you're awful quiet. I didn't kind of expected jokes, but that's all right. Made me sad. But that's all right. Anybody else around that want to say anything? I missed out on Paranormal Portal. I like his streams. I haven't been able to. I've been trying to catch up on the replays. I pop in, get to watch a little bit of it, then I got to go. So I haven't had a chance to talk to Al. Good old Al. Maybe she'll pop in tonight. And her internet's kind of funky. They're where they have cable up, where they do internet services and cable up in Canada is kind of screwy. Other than that, prayers go out to Edna. I hope she's doing good. And we will be streaming live every Friday night starting next Friday. As long as nothing happens or something comes up for her, we will be here every Friday night for our stream. Won't be oracles. She's done with oracles for the moment. She's finishing up and doing personals and stuff. But other than that, Friday nights will be paranormal. We'll discuss everything and anything. We're going to come up with some topics. We've got some good plans. So, yeah, Fridays will be 7:15 for about an hour or so, depending on how much time she gets. And we'll go from there. But I'm really excited about it. We have some good ideas. Now, let me see what Pixon wrote here. I went to the lake to have my gums supper, but the wind was so... Oh, really? Was it really bad? It was real windy here too. So I droned the fire, left the stove plate, flowers, went home, lit the candles and incense. There you go. Yeah, there's not much you can do about the weather. It was crazy. And I know you guys seen snow, haven't you? So yeah, I know it's rough up there. It's cold here. And it was windy. I felt bad for the kids last night because it actually got cold. It was a nice Halloween night, but it was a little colder than normal. At least it didn't rain on them or anything. Last year, I believe it rained on them, and the year before, it kind of had a snow-rain mix. So, Mr. Jarvis, how you doing, sir? And yes, I have watched Dairy. Yeah, I like the way it started off. A little rough on the start. Okay. I have to ask Miss Gemma about it because I know she's watched it. I haven't asked her opinion of it yet. But yeah, I mean, it's good. I'm intrigued. But man, they went all out. Not great, but I'm here. Having those. It's been an interesting week. It's been a very busy and interesting week. Like I said, pops. Sparks were flying all over the place. Was really concerned about a fire hazard. Oh, I bet. Yeah, it got pretty windy here. I don't know how it got windy. How bad was it down there, Chris? But yeah, it was got pretty windy here. When we got the rain, it was a good rain, but it brought the cold. It's chilly here. But it's supposed to get even cooler down south, man. I was really shocked how cold down south is going to get. Then we warm back up, and then we get cold again. But I know you guys up in that northeast, rained a little here. It didn't here. We didn't get any rain. Friday night or today, which was nice. But you haven't had any snow yet? I thought you guys might have. I know some of the upper areas have gotten a little bit of snow, and they're getting. I saw somewhere maybe this week you guys might, or toward the end of the weekend or something next weekend. I'll have to go look. That I saw on one of the guys on YouTube, other guys. In fact, two of them. And they didn't I think only two did theirs today, or maybe even one. Maybe it was just the one. I'll have to go look. But I know you guys will probably get it before us. I don't know, though. They're pretty nippy here. I don't see us getting our real first snowfall until probably after Thanksgiving. And then we'll get the major stuff after, either right before Christmas or after. Yeah, what happens, Chris? I want to start this up here in a minute and sit back and relax. Watch Gemma. I'll probably do it like I did last week, leave the mic on. If I say something, I say something. If I don't. I like leaving it on anyways because, one, it's kind of what I'm supposed to do. And two, like I say, I have people. I'm not always really good with the hands, so sometimes it's better if I can just yell, "Hey, hi." Yes, the Western Mountains have gotten some. I guess some of the trails on. Oh, really? Are closed? Yeah. Oh man, I get they're going to probably get dumped on it. And I know out west, the Rockies have already gotten snow, but I guess you know they're getting another slam here pretty soon. I couldn't believe yesterday. I went to go get candy. No, Thursday. I went to go get the candy because I always wait till the day before Halloween here, trick or treat, to get candy because it's always cheap. And everybody's throwing it on sale. And I go in the dang store. They got it all shoved up front. And already putting Christmas stuff up. And I'm like, it just gets worse. Neighbor across the street's already got their Christmas lights up and on. They did that all day today. I'm like, come on, man. It's not even Thanksgiving. But yeah, it's just, I don't know what brought me on that subject, but it just cracked me up. I can look out this window behind me and you can see the lights. It's nice, but yeah, that wind came through here pretty good too. Not as bad as I thought we'd get it, but it does tighten up as it leaves us and heads up over the Pennsylvania and up into the Appalachians. The wind bands tightened up where that curve's at when it comes up. But yeah, it's been pretty windy here. It's kind of windy now here. It's just probably a good 5-6 mile an hour wind. But I knew you guys were supposed to get more weather than us the next week or two. Now, Jersey has been pretty lucky. I mean, they've gotten their share of storms, but they were supposed to get some bad ones that let go a while back ago. So, but they're getting their share of rain. We need the rain, so I can't complain. But it kind of screwed me on doing yard work because I'm trying to get it done. And then you can do whatever it wants. Once those leaves come down, I'll be happy. We have a bunch of trees around here. My yard fills up fast. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Christmas. Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe the Christmas. I'm watching spooky stuff for a little bit before I switched over to my movies Friday night. The Christmas commercials were killing me. I was like, oh, my gosh. I know. Isn't it true? That's so true. Family gathering day is almost just an afterthought. Just an afterthought. Yeah. Oh yeah. But I get on Rumble here. I'm really thinking about doing some of my own stuff on Rumble because I've got things to say. Chris, go get a 5-way. There you go. That will cheer you up. Does sound good though. 5-way does. I've just been running, and it kills you anymore going out and stuff because everything's so dang expensive. I won't get on any other subjects than that. So, just for the sake of us, because it is kind of depressing. I don't want to do that. Let's have some fun. If you guys are all up for it, and the folks watching, I know there's only 4 of us, but I'm going to go ahead and start this. Guys, keep talking. Chris, hang out for a while. Relax. And we'll get this hopping. I think I already got her. Let's see how she looks. Go back. That's such an ugly face. Stop. Okay. Share screen. Got to have share screen too. What is going on? Why does that keep popping up? There we go. There we go. So that looks on there. Ooh, let's go to. There we go. And I'll move myself down here. Down in the bottom's where I belong. There we go. Push this back up. I sent for a Halloween costume on the 18th of October. It was supposed to be delivered on the 28th. It still hasn't shown up. Oh my gosh. I had problems not, with yours, but that's another reason why I have another package to send out, because I sent out one and it came back and they told me I didn't have the right address, but I checked the address is right. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? So I took it back and the guy said, oh, and they gave me some article about the guy that was on duty that day, never put it in the bin or whatever. They gave me some BS stories. So I fine, I'll take it somewhere else. So I took it to the post office to see if it will go through. And it came back 2 days later, not because it was the wrong address. It's because the guy got sick and nobody answered the door because I wanted to make sure he signed for the package. I didn't know he got sick. So They came back and asked me, that I could send both packages free since they already paid for it. So that's what I'm going to do. And then add yours to it. It's crazy. It's coming by FedEx. Now, usually FedEx is pretty good, so that's screwed up. Now, UPS, other than that one package, your package, I've never had a problem, but accidents do happen. Dad was so big, he's still trying to decide which ones he wants to send now. He's not going to send those two. The one was broke pretty bad. The other one was trash, but he could have fixed the frame on it. But he's picking out two new ones. The other one, it was gone. But yeah, I've never had a problem with FedEx, but I don't use them as much. Usually, if people send something to me, it's usually the post office, FedEx. Everything else that we get, everything else I get through UPS or Amazon comes pretty good on time. Now, I've had some go-arounds with Amazon lately. Plan to dress as a young, thin man with hair. Had wardrobe failures. Yeah, I just don't dress up anymore. I used to love it, but it's hard when you get to twitching and stuff and tremors. And then that makes your body all worked up, and you get to sweating, because I get to sweat sometimes. They're real bad. I'm fighting them. So I just stopped. I'm scary enough. Okay, let's turn this and get it running. It's good to see you, folks. And yeah, it's good. Let's go ahead and start this.
What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, just welcome. My name is GemmaJade, but today we are going to be discussing a mysterious portal, mysterious caves, and a mysterious disappearance. So I guess it's just a bunch of mysteries today. So we haven't talked about portals to other dimensions for a while here on this channel, so I thought I would take a chance, knowing that many of you don't like for me to go over the same thing week after week after week, and bring it to the channel in this week's video, along with some other things that I found that were interesting. As many of you are probably aware, I am completely convinced that there are an unlimited number of other dimensions and timelines besides ours. And I am always fascinated when I come across information where people have reported finding entrances to those places. They're all around us, these entrances. And while there are a lot of people out there who always say that I'm constantly speaking about dimensions, timelines, and portals on a metaphysical type level, I would like to set that record straight right now and with this video and tell you guys that sometimes there are doorways, either literal or physical, that could be somewhere like in a forest or in the woods, but only certain people can see them at certain times, and that's how the metaphysical and spiritual realm get brought into it. So they could be technically physically there, but you can only see it sometimes. They open at various times and close just as randomly. So it's really either how you're vibrating, whether or not you see them. And if you see them, whether or not you can enter. And then there's the fact that they just close randomly as well. So you don't know if you're going to be able to come back. I have always said that I would go through a portal to another realm or dimension in a heartbeat, but I'm honestly not so sure anymore, because where is it going to? How am I getting back? What's going on, you know? Didn't really think those things through in the beginning. Think about it though. How else would you get from modern day wherever you are to the ancient days of that same place? Well, like I said, sometimes it's vibration and accident, and sometimes in rare cases, it's someone or something on that side trying to bring you over there by any means necessary for whatever reason. However, with the more I learn and research into the subject of portals to other dimensions and doorways to other worlds, I am starting to notice that many of them end up being reportedly seen in the middle of the woods and out of the way in forests of the world. That makes me suspicious, as always, because this is where my mind always goes, of all of the missing people that seem to disappear under strange and bizarre circumstances in those exact same places. With all of that being said, I'll let you all see for yourselves what I'm talking about here, and let's jump right in. First, we're going to head to what was once known as the Canadian Northwest Territories. It could still be called that. I don't know. I don't know anything about Canada, and I don't know a lot about geography. Where, in the summer of 1968, a man named Alex M. was prospecting with his partner, Vino Heimelman, as they were both working for a Vancouver-based mining company in that area. The terrain was extremely rough, very desolate, and the two of them had spent upwards of 2 months there mining for mineral ore deposits without ever finding anything. It was somewhat boring and fairly uneventful until the last day that the two men were out there. These two men literally stumbled across something strange buried out there in the middle of the remote wilderness that began the strange story of how an interdimensional portal was uncovered in that Vancouver forest. For whatever reason, the two men were looking over the side of a cliff and saw a strange gorge in the earth below them with a flat gully at the bottom of it that measured 50 feet by 4 feet. Two round, large boulders were atop the gorge, and all around them were oddly shaped rocks of all shapes and sizes, most of which were covered with moss and lichen, as though they'd been there for a very, very long time. The strangest part of all of this, though, was a stagnant and unmoving tube-shaped fog bank that just hovered over that area and spread to nowhere else. The men were bored, and though they knew whatever they had found was anomalous and strange, at least it was interesting, and so they decided to further investigate it. Upon closer inspection, they saw that the larger rocks on top of the pile, the ones they had noticed first, were about 3 feet long in length and shaped like bananas. They were also made up of other much smaller rocks that were described as being, quote, translucent and similar to frogs' eggs, end quote. The smaller rocks were said by the men to be as smooth as glass and as small as a potato, and they collected some of them to further investigate them later on. Neither of them could identify what sort of mineral the rocks were, which was unusual for them because of their chosen profession, right? The men kept looking around the area and also found some teardrop-shaped pieces of smelted rock that looked to them like glass and slag, which to them looked like it had been produced by artificial mining activity, although they knew that there was none scheduled there at the time, and there also hadn't been any there in that area as far as they were aware.
For some reason, I don't remember all
So there
this
was no reason for them to find this type of stuff that indicated artificial mining activity because there was none in that area. As the two men discussed the puzzling things that they had just found, the fog that had been hovering there in the background and over the rocks themselves started churning and whirring around them. The men said it was looking at the fog that made them start to feel a weird energy in the air, like they weren't supposed to be there. And more than likely, they certainly weren't supposed to be. The men said it was looking at the fog that made them start to feel a weird energy in the air that made them feel like they were not supposed to be there. And they certainly weren't supposed to be seeing what they were, and they began to get very nervous in that particular area. To make things even more weird, there was a gigantic tree next to the foggy mass that had been uprooted and was lying on its side. The roots to the tree were huge. They were far too massive and going off in too many directions to have come from the gorge where the men were standing and where it was lying, and they couldn't for the life of them figure out how it had gotten there or where it could have possibly come from. As they discussed those things, Alex felt himself becoming more and more drawn to the foggy mass and began slowly creeping towards it as the two of them continued their conversation. He got close enough to where he should have been able to see right through it, but he noticed he couldn't see anything beyond it, and that made him more nervous, but also it made him more curious as to what exactly he and his friend had stumbled upon there. He felt like he was being compelled to keep walking towards the fog, and he took 2 or 3 slow and tentative steps inside of it to try and see if he could determine if there was anything of note in the woods behind it, since neither of them could see through it. Alex wrote a letter to his brother Bill about what happened next after he took those steps into the fog, and here's what he had to say, quote, "Approximately 2 steps into the mist, I saw a grassy field as far as my vision was capable of seeing at that time. The grass was about 1.5 foot tall at that point, and the more I advanced towards the grass, the higher the grass became. There was a wind blowing from the grass away from me. On entering the mist, my vision was limited to my left and my right. I advanced until the grass, brown colored, was approximately 3 feet. Then I decided to retreat, which I did. I cannot remember what the sky looked like. Gray colored seems correct. I decided to go back into the mist and cautioned myself not to walk into the grass. I went as far as the first time and things weren't the same. As I advanced, the grass got taller, approximately 4 foot now, and my vision left and right got wider. Far off to my right, there was an oasis with medium-sized trees in a circle with 2 tall palm trees growing in the center of the circle. At that point, I had enough. At that time, my mind went completely blank, except for one little piece of my brain that was fighting to take over my brain. Next, I was on my hands and knees with my brain powers intact, and I got out of there in record time, end quote. I don't know how he got out of there in record time, like what he was comparing that to, but I think he just means he beat feet pretty damn quickly out of there. At that point, once he finally dragged himself out of there, it seemed like it was just in the nick of time, too. Alex felt completely drained and utterly exhausted. He was hunched over with his head down and immediately started to wonder if it had all been real or just some sort of figment of his imagination. He remembered feeling menaced by the tall grass, and with that felt a dangerous feeling of dread and doom that a little voice in his head told him it would be dangerous to enter again, and so he didn't. He had no idea why it would have been dangerous, what the voice was, or even why he felt it was also dangerous. Only he did know it, and he knew it with absolute certainty. As Alex was still hunched over but back outside of the fog, he looked up and saw something even stranger, as he would later relate to his brother in a phone conversation, and his brother reported it all to the Center for UFO Studies, or SUFON, with a C, by saying, quote, he looked up at the mist and saw 2 men looking at him. They were standing side by side at the edge of the fog and about 3 feet off the ground. They appeared to be about 6 feet tall plus, had long hair and long beards, salt and pepper hair, more salt colored. They appeared to be about 40 years old or so. They looked Caucasian, having facial features like ours, but he could not see any eyeballs. They looked like identical twins. They were wearing pale colored pants and robes that extended down midway between the knee and ankle and a belt around their middle. Both were wearing sandals. He looked back down at the ground and then back up at the 2 men in the mist. Now one is off to the side in the mist and behind the front man. So they're standing in front, one in front of the other. The man in the front was still standing while the man in the back seemed to be sitting on a chair that was not there. It was a lot more difficult to see him in the mist. The man in the back reminded him of the statue called the Thinker. Neither of them said anything. They only watched him. Alex said that at this point he was feeling quite shaken and decided to get back to camp, end quote. Okay, Alex didn't tell the man he had been working with there that day what he had seen in the mist, and he didn't tell anyone back at their satellite camp either. In fact, aside from his brother, he kept all of this to himself for years, the whole time considering going back and looking for what he described as the doorway to lead him back into the same place he had been in the first place with the 2 men in the misty fog. Before we move on to what happened next, guys, I'd like to briefly discuss and unpack what has been said so far by Alex about what he saw and experienced that day. When I went back to read what he initially reported, I thought immediately that maybe he was seeing some other world through the body of a person or entity from an alternate dimension or reality. The thing that got me, though, was why he wasn't merely an onlooker, but it seems as though he took on a whole new state of being and awareness, with his vision broadening with each step he took. I wonder if he went into some other realm instead of jumping into another timeline or dimension shifting. The only thing I could come up with was that perhaps he was in a more spiritually elevated place than human beings are supposed to ever find themselves in, and that his mind just really couldn't handle it. Then I read what his brother said that he told him about what happened next, and here's my thoughts on that. It leads me to believe even more than I already did that he was in some sort of spiritual realm or dimension and not another timeline on Earth as we know it. The lack of eyeballs on the men is what sealed the deal for me with that one, because entities who are spiritually elevated like that don't need to see, at least as far as we human beings need to see. They don't have the need for eyes or eyeballs, not really. For as creepy as that sounds, it is actually quite common. As far as what the men were doing with the Thinker image, they may have been on to the fact that someone, a human being, had somehow jumped whoever the other person was who was with them, there with them, with that being who or whatever Alex inadvertently jumped into. Meaning those men were probably there with a third person or being, really. And Alex probably inadvertently jumped into that third being. Do I know this for sure? No. I'm taking an educated guess based on my professional opinion. Also, as I say a lot of the time, like if we're discussing it in live streams or even in other videos, if you see an entity in front of you, a spirit or a ghost, and it's 90% of the time, or even more than that, it's always reported that they're floating. They're not floating. They're vibrating at a different frequency and on a higher plane. That's why they're floating. So this was obviously somewhere like that because they were about 3 feet off the ground as far as what Alex reported. Moving on. So while Alex went decades without talking about what he saw, he did send samples of the rocks into a Dr. Sinclair, who was a geologist. And Dr. Sinclair said that he had no idea what they could have possibly been and that he had never seen anything like them before. Alex really didn't ever tell anyone except his brother, whose name was Bill M. And then it was Bill who turned the information over to Suffon. It just feels weird saying that. Bill seemed to have been purposely and incredibly vague about the location of the so-called Zorway, and when the center finally tracked down Alex, he confirmed that it was all true, but was seemingly very upset that the story had gotten out and was insistent that no one release his full name publicly ever to anyone. I think he was either disappointed, agitated, whatever it was, depending on who you ask, the way he was feeling about it. But the reason I think he was feeling so intensely about being contacted like that is because I think that maybe he was planning on going back there and thought the forces that be would move it or close it up somehow, and he wouldn't be able to get back if he should choose. The other reason I thought of was that perhaps he was nervous his professional reputation or even maybe his personal one could have been tarnished because of it. There's always that third possibility that this whole thing was a farce, but I don't think so in this particular case. Hear me out. So why in the world would someone who was faking or lying about something this significant and seemingly traumatic then just go out of his way to keep it secret for decades and make sure that he never received any sort of publicity for the story or compensation about what happened to him? It just doesn't make sense to me to make this up so that you can tell your brother a cool story. So since there was no other information available on this particular case, I was once again wondering what else to write about, and I came across something I thought would go nicely with the portal in the woods, and that's mystical caves and some possible strange disappearances connected to them. When just talking about caves in general, they can be somewhat creepy and spooky places, imposing and intimidating at best, and at worst, inhospitable. Since time before time, caves have been the object of many legends and all sorts of mythical and mystical tales. So our first legendary and mysterious cave is located in Wisconsin in the United States. Before settlers arrived in the area, it said that 2 young boys from the Winnebago tribe went out to hunt for deer to bring back to their village somewhere among the bluffs along the Wisconsin River in that area. The weather was clear, and even for how young they were, as was usual in those days, the boys were already seasoned animal trackers and hunters, so no one was really worried about them at first when they either decided to go or were sent out to get the food not returning, and no one in the village having seen or heard from them. Everyone finally started to become concerned about the boys' well-being and safety, and the tribe's chief sent 10 men out to search for them and bring them back safely. This group of 10 men included the tribe's very best trackers, and it wasn't even a thought in anyone's head that they wouldn't just quickly go out, find the young boys, and bring them back home safely. But this is the GemmaJade channel after all, and things always seem to have some sort of twist or strange ending to them here on this channel, so that's where we're going to take it now. Things got very strange indeed. While it took almost no time at all for the trackers to pick up the boys' scents, which apparently had them meandering all throughout the trees in the initial area of the forest where they had stayed, to the mouth of a cave. There weren't any tracks leading away from the cave's entrance, and therefore the men figured out, for whatever reason, the boys had to have gone into the cave and not yet come out. 2 of the tribesmen were sent in to go and get the boys and bring them back out, while the other 8 stayed outside and waited for them to come back out with the kids. However, hours passed, and consistent calls to the 2 men and to the boys continued to go unanswered in that time. So the remaining men on the outside of the cave started discussing amongst themselves what they should do. Started hearing light singing described by them as, quote, weirdly beautiful plaintive notes, end quote, coming out of the cave. The singing or whatever it was said to have been so faint that the men could hardly hear it over the sound of the wind. So men started entering the cave to bring the others out, along with the boys, in groups of 2. Over and over again, no one would come out, and the others would wait hours and incessantly call out to them with no answer in return. 2 by 2 by 2, they trudged in there. Eventually, only 2 of the tribesmen of the 10 originally sent out to search for the boys remained, and those 2 smartly decided to go back and report to the chief about what happened, gone into the cave and not come out, seemingly disappearing into the murky black darkness of it. Then there was a good chance whatever had happened to them would happen again to those guys, and they wanted no part of it. I mean, they were smart guys. The chief's name was Great Eagle, and he had enough, and he wanted not only the boys brought back to the village, but the 8 men he had lost the previous day as well. And so he sent 100 of his best men, all of them his best and greatest warriors, and all of them armed to the max, out to the cave the very next day. Great Eagle even went with them, and when they arrived at the cave's entrance the following morning, he had an idea. All of the men joined hands in order to create a sort of human chain so that whoever went into the cave would have a connection to the outside, and there was no risk of anyone getting lost or anything bad happening to any of them. Or so they thought. At some point, they were all lined up with their hands linked firmly together. The man who was second in front in the line realized that the hand that he had been holding only a second before, the man at the very front of the line was no longer holding his hand and had seemingly just vanished. Then he just vanished as well, and the third guy in line was feeling around in the dark and calling out for them, but they didn't respond, and there was no one out there. This continued right on down the line, with each person who was first in line mysteriously vanishing without a sound or trace left behind, leaving the next person in line to suffer the same fate, whatever that fate may have been. While I couldn't find how many men disappeared before everyone else finally realized what was happening, at some point they did figure it out, and the chain broke apart as they all ran for safety outside of the cave. The rest of them did make it out. Once outside, they all peered into the darkness, but there was nothing but it to greet them. Oh, and that mournful, sad song whispering through the darkness at them as well. The men were absolutely terrified, but remember, they were also warriors. So regardless of how scared they were, they remained undaunted in their quest to recover the young boys they had initially set out to look for, and every other member of their tribe and fellow warriors that they had lost in that cave up to that point. Great Eagle, in all his wisdom, decided to just tie a rope around one warrior's waist and send him in to see what was going on. If he were to sense trouble, be pulled away by something, or feel strange or odd for any other reason, he was to just turn and yell back out to Great Eagle and the rest of the tribesmen out there with him, and they would just quickly tug on the rope and pull him back out. That was the plan anyway. The warrior walked into the cave bravely as the others stayed on the outside, but kept
the more
a
I hear the
firm
story,
grip on the
more
rope
now I
connected
remember
to
this
him.
one.
This all went as planned for like a minute or two and up to a certain point, but then the rope simply stopped moving and the men outside frantically tugged it back out in order to get the man to safety. However, it was too late and he was gone as well. He had also disappeared into the nothingness of that creepy darn cave. Great Eagle ordered the remaining men back to the village and deemed the cave to be forbidden territory. Despite ordering the entire village to stay away from that cave and even from the area outside of and around it, Great Eagle himself became completely obsessed with figuring out what was happening with it and how/why everyone was disappearing into it. Where were they going? What was going on? He visited there again not too long after the day he had last been there and lost so many of his greatest warriors, but when he peered in there, there was nothing to see but darkness, and even the song wasn't whispering in the wind at him that day. He decided to once again send his 2 best warriors out there again, probably because he was obsessed and obviously not thinking clearly. And with Native Americans, it's all about honor and dignity, obeying your chief. So they went without complaint into the cave that had swallowed up so many of their allies and friends already. The men made it through and even had to shimmy and crawl down on their stomachs because some of the caverns were too short and too narrow for them to fit through otherwise. Eventually, they did come to what was at the end of this cave, a room without any exit other than the entrance they had just shimmied in through. They could only see by the light of their torches, and that's actual torch, not British for flashlight, and what they saw was absolutely horrifying to say the least. Dozens upon dozens of human skeletons all piled up on top of one another and haphazardly lying about, all on their stomachs as if they were killed the moment they crawled into the room. Now, once they looked a little closer, they were even more terrified of what they had found. A lot of the skeletons had their arms outstretched as though they were reaching for something or someone. So lying on their stomachs, arms outstretched. And besides the piles, there was dozens of them laid out in some sort of lined formation, like someone or something had purposefully arranged them that way. They also said they saw an enormous stone there, which they believed someone must have thrown in there. And while I don't know why that's important at all, I do know that they hightailed it out of there as fast as they could, probably thinking that if they hung around any longer, they would be the next to be lying there in the formation on the floor of that murky and dank cave. The cave was sealed after they made their discovery, and over time the land around it hid it because no one was tending to it any longer. It was forbidden. The cave is called, quote, the Lost Death Song Cave, end quote, nowadays, and that's because it's still so hidden that no one can find it anymore, allegedly. It became somewhat obscure until the 1880s when a German immigrant named Paul Seifert, who was out searching the area for Native American artifacts so that he could sell them to collectors, just happened to stumble across it. He and an unnamed partner went into the cave and apparently ended up in the same cavern at the end with all of the human skeletons still all piled up and still with some lying in strange positions as if someone or something had carefully placed them that way. It was just as Great Eagle had reported to the tribe that day all those years before, perhaps centuries, except there was no beautiful and mournful melody in the air. Paul described what he and his companion heard by saying the sounds they heard that day coming out and echoing out from that cave were like, quote, the howling of a lot of maniacs and the moaning of the dying under torture, end quote. They noped the F out of there, and Paul and his companion never told a soul where the entrance they found was. Paul Seifert died in 1921, and he took the secret to the other side with him, so let's move on. In 1967, in Hannibal, Missouri, there was some construction being done on the highway, and the workers uncovered an intricate underground cave system. Mom, you have been asking me to cover the Hannibal Mines case for a while now. I stumbled upon it. Didn't even know I was going to be covering it today, so this one's for you, Mama. That wasn't strange in and of itself because Missouri is known to this day to be home to more than 8,000 known caves. And in fact, at the time, Missouri was nicknamed the Cave State. But what was odd about it was the perplexing mystery it would soon become a part of. Some local boys and self-proclaimed adventurers named Joey and Billy Hogue, aged 13 and 11 respectively, decided to grab some shovels and flashlights and go out there to explore the cave system, which was called Murphy's Cave. The construction workers turned them away at first, and their parents found out about their little attempted underground excursion and forbade them to go back. The boys, though, were undeterred. The following day, they waited until after school and then snuck around through the construction site somehow, and they were able to get inside of the cave. That was May 9th, 1967, and some witnesses later came forward claiming to have seen the boys at the cave entrance at around 4:30 in the afternoon. The boys never went home that night, and the next day, a search was launched. MU, my favorite source for information, said of what happened next, quote, teams of searchers, the Mark Twain Emergency Squad, and the National Speleological Society scoured the cave as police volunteers and the Missouri National Guard combed the surrounding area for any signs of the boys, but there was nothing. Sniffer dogs followed the scent trail to the cave entrance, so it was assumed they must have entered, but it seems that they never came back out. Since the cave system was not particularly large or complex, it was seen as odd that they should so thoroughly disappear, and even odder that not a single sign of them could be found in the dank gloom. Interviews with locals and checks on trains and buses leading out of Hannibal also led nowhere, as did various visions given by psychics who were brought in out of desperation. The search lasted for nearly a month, but not a trace of the missing boys was ever found. Theories on what happened to what was now being called the Lost Hannibal Boys run the range. A construction accident, cave-in, serial killer, running away from home, and of course getting lost in the cave were all considered, but there is not a speck of evidence for any of it. A more bizarre detail that may or may not be related is that it would later turn out that there had been some UFO activity reported in the area not long before the boys vanished, Whatever the case may be, the 3 missing boys have not been seen since, and a plaque and stone monument sits atop the Lover's Leap Park overlooking the Mississippi River to honor their memory, end quote. Our next case involved a very smart, well-liked, and easygoing guy named Randy Wayne Leach. At around 6:45 p.m. on April 15th, 1988, Randy borrowed his mother's car to go to a friend's house. He was going to a party. Since the friend only lived about 5 miles away from their home in Linwood, Leavenworth County, Kansas, and the whole drive there would be through very safe neighborhoods and areas, and because it was so early in the night, and because Randy was such a responsible young man, his mother didn't think anything of it when he took the car. She was like, yeah, go have fun. He said he would be back later, and there was no reason for either of them to ever have thought that wouldn't be the truth. Randy got into the car to head to a party at a friend's house and would end up becoming a part of one of the country's most perplexing mysteries at that time, and the mystery has never been solved and therefore still endures to this very day. Now, what we do know about what happened that night is limited, but I'll tell you all what I was able to find. Randy stopped at a convenience store for gas and food before visiting a cousin. He then went to the body shop in DeSoto so that he could swoon over the 1966 Mustang his parents were restoring for him there. His parents were gifting it to him when he graduated school, which would have been soon. Randy didn't get to the party until between 9:30 and 10 o'clock that evening. There were up to 150 people at the party, all drunk, drinking, and even some were doing some sorts of drugs. Now, 4 different sources. They say 50, 100, 150, and 75. Those are the 4 numbers that I got as to how many people were at this party. That's why I said up to 150.
But the kids,
it's still a major point of contention as to whether or not Randy had anything to drink. He was responsible all the time, not just sometimes. So it was more than likely that he wasn't planning on driving drunk. And while some of the other partygoers said they never saw him pick up a drink, most people there did agree that at some point in the night, he began to act strangely and started stumbling around as if he were intoxicated. No one actually saw Randy have a drink, though, and no one actually saw him leave the party either, so we don't know what time he left for sure. But people who were there do mostly agree that it was definitely after his curfew, which was 1 o'clock in the morning. That was strange itself because Randy always abided by the rules, and his curfew was one that he took very seriously and never ever broke, especially not without at least calling his mother or his parents to let them know he was running late. So at one point after 1 in the morning, Randy got into his car and basically drove off the face of the earth. It wouldn't be until the next morning when his parents woke up and saw he still wasn't home that any alarm bells started going off. After calling all of the friends they could think of to see if any of them knew where Randy was and having no luck, his parents immediately called the police. The investigation into Randy's disappearance started almost immediately with them going and interviewing partygoers and the people in the house where it was thrown as well. The police thought the witnesses were being purposefully vague about when Randy left and what he had done while he had been there, things like that. They just were not giving any answers up. It's probably because they were teenagers, they were young adults,
they didn't want to snitch on each other.
You know, but it's very suspicious. If you're being interviewed in a murder investigation, guys, don't worry about the petty stuff, and drugs do become very petty when investigators are trying to get answers from you about a homicide. Trust me, I know. The police also thought that it was really strange that the house the party had been held in seemed to have been immaculately cleaned up. And they thought that was unusual because only a few hours before there had been a huge party with up to 150 teenagers and young people getting drunk and high there. But they didn't find any evidence to say one way or another what happened to Randy and couldn't prove if anyone was lying or withholding information or not. They had their suspicions. The only thing multiple people reported that they remembered about Randy that night was that he had been having trouble walking. Randy remained missing and no further evidence was ever able to be collected and no other witnesses came forward. Family members and the police posted the missing persons flyers everywhere all around town and then started looking for the car. They searched the area where he was last seen intensely and even combed a nearby river for his car, but it was all to no avail. Police initially suspected, or at least they suspected it after not finding any physical evidence at all as to where he went, and with no witnesses coming forward, that Randy had simply had enough of his life and run away, not wanting to deal with his amazingly stressful life anymore, I guess. Obviously, Randy's family was adamant that wasn't the case, and he loved his life, and he was definitely looking forward to graduating and owning that Mustang that they were having restored for him. There were alleged sightings that seemed to back up the police's theories about him running away, but none of them could ever be substantiated. This is where the odd rumors started circulating about what could have and more than likely did happen to Randy Leach. Keep in mind as we go forward the time and place. This was Middle America, Kansas, the Bible Belt in the 80s, so there was definitely some satanic panic happening around that particular area, more so than the rest of the country, which is, if you're old enough to remember, really saying something. I'm an 80s baby, but I do remember like the late 80s constantly seeing things about satanic panic and Satan worship.
It was big.
All over the news all the time. The main rumor going around about what happened to Randy Leach was that he had been captured by the robed and hooded satanic cult that roamed the woods with torches and chalices of blood near where the party was he had gone to the last night he was ever seen alive. They had abducted him in order to do sacrifice stuff on him and rituals. And that was basically the gist of that one. As you can tell, I take that one very, very seriously. I won't waste any more time other than those few sentences on that one because it's ridiculous and I'm kind of running out of time here. The police brought in several alleged Satanists throughout the years for questioning, but none of them were ever implicated in Randy's disappearance, and none even were persons of interest, let alone actual suspects. There was only potentially one person who was a potential person of interest in this case. That was a young man named Steve Daughtry. He had attended the same party Randy was last seen at, and the next morning he was said to have been behaving suspiciously, driving 10 miles per hour on a back road instead of doing anything near the speed limit, which was 55. Yeah, that's it. That's the evidence. He was behaving suspiciously by driving 40 miles below the speed limit on a back road near where the party was the day after he attended it, the morning after, where he was probably drunk and just trying to take it easy and not get pulled over by the cops, drunk and or drugged driving. He eventually died, and whether or not he knew anything is still anyone's guess, but the case of Randy Leach, as I said, still remains unsolved to this day. So where does a cave come in? I really don't know. I wrote, where a cave comes in, I think, is that there were two young men who came forward years later and said that they had been kidnapped, of course, by Satanists, held hostage in a cave for several days. They went to the police and reported the incident, insisting that they also saw Randy's deceased body there in that cave as well. However, the police did search the cave, but not only did they not find Randy's remains, they found no evidence of any sort of cult or satanic activity ever taking place there, and it's anyone's guess why the young men would lie about it, but apparently they did. Randy's father did publicly commend the police investigating his son's disappearance at one point by saying that not only had they searched the cave, but they bulldozed it so that no one else's son could end up in there or anything like that. The police department publicly denied ever bulldozing the cave and said they did kind of a periphery search on it and found no evidence. Randy's parents insist that the police have botched the investigation from the very beginning. The first example they give is that the investigators waited far too long to search some of the area's many creeks. His parents also have complained that the department failed to follow up on some allegedly really great leads the way they should have, and one of the worst cases of how they dropped the ball was when they arrested a suspect in the 90s named Eric Montgomery. Eric had been convicted of 2 other homicides that took place in the same area where the party was held where Randy was last seen. He later claimed he and an accomplice killed people and put their bodies in barrels and then threw those barrels into the Missouri River. He eventually died in prison, with the police never having followed up to try to find out if Randy was one of their victims or not. Even stranger still is the fact that the police never mentioned to Randy's parents that they ever even had a suspect in custody, and the records of the brief questioning they did carry out on him were sealed by the courts, effectively keeping the public and the family from accessing them. And to this very day, the police involved refuse to release those records and cite no reason for it. The authorities have been constantly and consistently accused by the Leaches of not updating the family at all about anything going on with and in Randy's case, and all of that led them to them hiring their own private investigators. Well, yeah, they had to hire more than one private investigator because the first one they hired was very shortly thereafter found dead, both he and his wife having been shot in the head and killed. in what police said wasn't anything spooky at all. It was just a big coincidence and had been a murder-suicide. Whether the investigator or the wife was the murderer or the suicider, I really have no idea. Another investigator was brought in, and with help from a detective from the Leavenworth County Sheriff's Office named Dawn Weston, helped to bring in 3 men who were very quickly released soon after without any charges being filed against them. After that, both private investigators who were on the case and working for the Leaches with Detective Weston retired, left the state, and the only explanation either one of them ever gave was that they feared for their lives. The case of Randy Leach remains unsolved, and there has been absolutely no movement in the case at all for decades. Again, I don't know why this case was lumped in with mysterious cave disappearances, and because I only skim source material before writing my script so that I can have a more authentic reaction and response for you guys, I didn't realize any of that until it was too late and I already copied everything up to this point. It is worth mentioning, though, just on the basis that it's a strange and peculiar unsolved disappearance, and his family is still out there somewhere looking for answers. I'll end this with a quote from MU that sums it all up by saying, quote, "The case of the vanishing of Randy Leach remains totally unsolved even over 3 decades later. There have been no new leads, no new suspects, no additional evidence, and although it is occasionally revisited by authorities, it has largely been swept under the carpet and forgotten about. Randy Leach was officially declared dead in 2001, but he has never been found, and his family has continued over the years to investigate what happened to little success. Was the local law enforcement in on this? What role did cultists have to play in it, if any at all? What happened to those investigators? Why would anyone want to cover it all up? And was this just some freaky little town embroiled in some kind of strange stuff that they didn't want anyone to snoop into? You never know. If so, then why Randy Leach? Whatever happened to him, this grim case has gone on to become mired in a morass of weird mysteries, conspiracies, cover-ups, and strangeness that we will likely never be able to get through." End quote. Please let me know what you all think in the comments below, please. As always, I look forward to hearing your opinions and seeing your theories. I ran out of time before I got to discuss the most bizarre and strange disappearance involving a cave I have ever personally come across, and that's the case of Kenny Veach and the M Cave. If you all want me to talk about that, let me know, and I'll certainly make it happen.
That's the one about the
That's
YouTuber
all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content. If you enjoyed hanging out with me, and if you enjoyed hanging out with each other, if you attended Premiere, spread the love by sharing this video. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure your notification bell is turned on. Live Intuitive Oracle with myself and GhostDragonZW, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, either on Friday or Saturday, depending on which week it is. That is the only way I can keep that show going right now, guys, after almost 3 years of doing it on Wednesday. But it is the same time. It is the
1 second. There we go. So those were good. Yeah, the M Cave's an interesting case. A lot of you probably already know that story about the young, or wasn't that young, but the guy that was desert guy out there it was in Arizona somewhere out west, when he was looking for, he did a lot of stuff outside and found a cave that was shaped like an M, and he said it had an M opening to it, and caught some weird vibes from it and heard some weird stuff, and left. And then everybody told him to go back and see if he can find it, and he went to look for it to see if he could find it again, and they never found him again. There's some rumors that his girlfriend said he kind of removed himself, but I don't know. I don't buy that. She was kind of iffy anyway, so. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you want another one, let me know. Let me know, and I'll throw another one on. Because she actually has. The one I was going to play for later, too, was, because that one was 40 minutes from, so I've gone back to just throwing them, because this way she gets the views for them, too. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? It's not that far down, so I shouldn't have that far to go. But everybody enjoyed that, I hope. And maybe I'll play, what time is it? It's 1:04. I'll play one more. I think I know the perfect one, too. This one's about Well, let's see. Let's do one about Ghost in the Machine. Everybody up for that one? It's about a half hour long, and then after that, I'll say my good nights. Or would you guys rather chat? Well, everybody's being quiet, so I think I'll just go ahead and play this one. And then when it's done, we'll see what's up. All good here. And again, I hope everybody's having a good day. And all those that come in, I hope you're having a good Halloween. Had a good Halloween. Hold on. Oops. And I hope everybody's having a... Don't do that. I hate when it does that. Okay. Let me do this. Got to get it on. And folks hanging out, I'm glad you're hanging out. I am going to do another one. This one's Ghost in the Machines. It's about 30 minutes. And let me get it up on the board. Get it. There we go.
What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing messages from the other side and whether or not they're proof that EVPs really are coming from the dead. It seems as though, at least in my opinion, the more advanced modern technology becomes, the more ghosts, spirits, and other entities from the other side are able to catch up and catch on and learn how to use said technological advances. It's almost as though spirits are just as eager as some humans are to learn how to use new technological devices. Guess what? They are excited about it sometimes. While it's true, at least in my experience, that a spirit from, say, the 1700s is going to be more scared than anything else of something like an answering machine, that's not true for most spirits who come from a more recent incarnation. I've come across more stories than I could ever list here of entities leaving messages in bizarre ways that seem to terrify the humans involved, and it always fascinates me when it's said to happen. I have my windows open. It's a beautiful day. There's a lot of noise. I don't know what to do about it. Well, it's understandable for someone to be shocked when they receive a message on their cell phone from Uncle Tom, who died of a heart attack last week, with the message having been from last night. It's quite another when some poor and unsuspecting human listens to it and becomes absolutely terrified. I often wonder if it's the actual message and the fact that it came from a deceased person that terrifies people, or if it's the implications of such things when they happen that's the real culprit for the terror. I guess that depends on the individual and what their personal beliefs and experiences are when it comes to this type of subject matter. Opinions are all over the place, but they're mostly based on someone's experience. So your opinions, just like mine, are going to be based on real world experiences that we've had in our lives. And I say that all the time. You probably don't agree and probably won't agree with 100% of what I say because you may have experienced something different. And that's where the skeptics have a field day, because you'll know you're 100% right with the exact opposite of what I just said. And I know I'm 100% right, but they don't understand that there are things going on that we as human beings cannot comprehend and understand yet. It's not black and white. It's not even black, white, and gray. There's a whole rainbow and more of colors when it comes to this type of stuff and in the paranormal realm and community. It's not only deceased loved ones who leave these sorts of messages on our phones or machines specifically made to take them, but the implications of what it means as far as their beliefs in general. Let's take a look at some instances where people were said to have been left messages from the other side on their answering machines, and you can let me know what you think in the end in the comments below. Let's jump right in. Our first case comes from the site A Week in the Weird and was shared by a woman who only calls herself Judy. Judy first claims that she was raised in what she believed to have been an extremely haunted house. One of the reasons she believes that is because she said her sister used to have random and sudden strange seizures where she would speak in tongues as though she were actually possessed. There would be strange displays of objects moving on their own, disembodied voices, and sounds, and a myriad of other somewhat typical haunted house type phenomenon happening all the time. Most of the activity seemed like it was focused on the bathroom, and while in there, Judy said she would often hear a voice taunting her from the shadows by calling her name and letting her know she wasn't alone, even though she couldn't see anyone in there with her and didn't recognize the voice at all. It got so bad, she claims her parents finally brought a priest over to exorcise the house, and according to Judy, most of the activity, including the bathroom antics, would subside once that happened. As an adult, though, she said that she would receive a series of strange messages on her elderly mother's landline phone. Landline phones, remember those? That's what we're talking about here. One day, Judy came home from being out all day and saw on the phone's answering machine that she had missed several calls and just assumed that they were mostly from her friends or her mother's friends. She pressed play on the machine without even thinking about it, but was terrified and confused when she heard what the messages on the machine had actually contained. Low, unintelligible whispers and mumblings came through the line, and when she finally cleaned up the recordings, mainly by taking the static out of them, she could hear a man's voice incessantly whispering her name. I think this was reminiscent to her of what was going on in the house in the bathroom when she was younger. It wasn't just that one man's voice, though, and there seemed to be several different voices on there as well, all saying somewhat random and kind of bizarre things like hide, go to my house, and hurry. Of course, Judy was really frightened, and she took those messages as some type of warning that something bad was about to happen that she would need to hide from. Judy's daughter said she hadn't left them as a prank or anything when Judy asked her, so she went and asked her own mother if maybe she knew who had left them. So she was trying to debunk this being a spiritual thing herself, which I applaud that. Because honestly, that's the first thing that people are going to say. It's like, oh, it had to have been a joke. It had to have been a prank. At that time, her mother was elderly and had been home all day and said that the phone hadn't rang a single time, so there shouldn't have been any messages on the machine to begin with. The woman just couldn't figure it out, and though Judy didn't necessarily forget all about it, she tried to put it from her mind. Her daughter, however, was absolutely fascinated by it, and she said, quote, "The message is not static but seems more glitchy, but there is a dominant low voice that seems to say my mother's name. Judy, at times. It's 50 seconds long and repeats. I brought my friends over because they love the supernatural, so we came over to see what we could investigate and to help my mother out because she's extremely religious and emotional. I figured out how to send the messages to my own phone and then uploaded it to my computer, where I have some software that could enhance the sound clips. Every time I listen to it, I get shivers down my back," end quote. That's very interesting, but of course, there's no way of knowing if anything happened to Judy or her family where the messages would have been a warning, because the story, of course, ends there. Since a lot of you have told me you like when I weigh in on these types of things, given my own experiences and abilities, I'm going to do just that here. So let's just assume that if these messages had been a warning that from the beyond that something was going to happen, that information of something having happened would have been in my source material and in the information I used to put this video together. It wouldn't have ended so up in the air, because that would have been big news, right? Ghost warns local woman of fire in the house or something like that. So for time's sake, let's just scratch that off the list of possibilities. Now, if I were listening to something like this, it would depend on the tone of the voices and the vibration of them. That's something that's going to be a bit hard for me to explain, as it's just a word that I tend to use when describing spirits' voices, and I don't think it actually has anything to do with how they're vibrating, except to say that they could either be neutral, lower, or higher vibrational. In my experience, it's almost always one of those three choices. Judy said the voices sounded demonic, but we have to take into account that she was deeply religious, and some religions believe that all spirits are demons because otherwise they wouldn't be earthbound. Now, most religious people don't know or don't want to hear that just because a spirit is here around you, showing itself to you, speaking to you, doesn't mean it's necessarily earthbound or fully earthbound. I'm telling you, you guys got to start sending your questions into my email. I'm just saying. So I feel really bad for people who believe that all spirits are demons, but I do understand why they would in most cases. I have many guesses as to what could have been going on here, but I will state the main theory again for time's sake. Perhaps they were doing some work on the phone lines outside or on a neighbor's house somewhere, and somehow the line picked up some residual voices from something that happened on the land or in the home a very long time ago. This sounds to me like people having a conversation where they were frightened and trying to figure out a way to get away from something or someone, and that usually remains in the atmosphere, in the energy of the land or the home, long after the people whose voices they were have moved on. However, without knowing anything about where this took place or the land, I will say one more thing. This could have been spirits in the home, because we already know that according to Judy, the house was haunted, who were having conversations amongst themselves about something that may not have had anything to do with Judy or her family. When spirits learn how to use a new device, we don't always know about it, so perhaps they had learned to use such things like phone lines and answering machines and things like that, and the connection just didn't disconnect as the residual or actual spirits and energy kept on talking about whatever they were talking about. These are, of course, just shots in the dark, because without speaking to the spirits in the home, which is, of course, what I do best and how I would figure out what's going on in real life, I can't possibly know anything more than anyone else could, and need to just make the most educated guess possible as a professional in this field. However, I will say that hearing something like this when you aren't used to hearing the voices of spirit, and especially when you are super religious and think everything is demonic, can be very nerve-wracking and terrifying. My heart goes out to poor Judy, and I hope she got the activity in that house under control or got out of there so that she and or her mother didn't have to deal with it anymore. That's the best thing to do when you don't know what's going on and you're scared. If you can, get out. So a Reddit user named Jackknife Trailer said he had a similar experience in the 90s when he was living with his now ex-girlfriend, with whom he had been having issues with while in the home at the time. He claims this woman was a psycho, and after a particularly terrible argument, he just packed up all of his belongings, which included the digital answering machine they both used, and got the hell out of there. He moved out, and things started getting really strange almost right away for our witness. He said, quote, "One day when she found out I was seeing someone else, she left about 80 messages on that machine I mentioned earlier, lasting several minutes each." And I mean, she really let her inner psycho out. Really messed up, hysterical, angry, terrifying, emotionally intense stuff. Sometimes she had a paralyzing emotional intensity to her, which is one of the reasons I had to leave her in the first place. Continuing, I listened to the first few seconds of each message. It would tell me the duration of each message before it played to feel it out and then skip/delete. I avoided the hell out of her after that, or so I thought. Turns out that when I would receive other messages, frequently that message would cut out somewhere in the middle, and parts of the psycho messages from the ex would start playing. Not just any part, though. The really emotional, scary parts. Some parts I didn't even remember hearing, remember skipping or deleting. Never a mundane blah, blah, blah. These were like terrifying, psychodramatic sound bites. It became a nuisance when I would miss parts of important messages. Sometimes the regular messages would pick up where they left off. Sometimes they wouldn't. It didn't always happen. It was completely at random. Sometimes days or weeks would go by, then it would just crop up and start again. I cleared all messages, changed the greeting, put in new batteries, did a factory reset, but nothing seemed to affect it, and the problem persisted until I couldn't take it anymore and I threw it away. And no, in case you were wondering, I'm not like schizo or prone to hearing voices or anything like that. This incident was a one of a kind in my life, end quote. So I included this one because the ex wasn't deceased when her intensely emotional messages were bleeding through into the guy's other regular everyday messages. There's never one reason for any of these things of what it could be, and I'm just taking my best shot in the dark to try and give a reason why they could be happening, even though the list goes on for why it could all be. I was immediately thinking that the emotions in her were possibly taking on a life of their own, and for whatever reason, they were haunting this man. That does happen, you know. It really does. I was also wondering if the ex was perhaps a witch or someone with abilities who either didn't know it or didn't know how to deal with them, because those are both great reasons as to why it could have all been happening as well. However, maybe it wasn't paranormal or supernatural at all, but there's really no way to ever know for sure. The possibilities are literally endless. Most of the time when answering machines and voicemail messages are involved, it's the spirit of a deceased person the recipient knows, and they're, for whatever reason, trying to reach out and get a message to that living person. That's what happened to Reddit user SaltyPanda93. According to them, about a week after their great-grandmother had passed away, something strange started happening with the answering machine. He or she was visiting his grandparents and giving condolences when they would say what happened. Quote, so about a week after my great-grandmother passed away, I was over visiting with my grandparents and we were all sitting around talking as usual with nothing out of the ordinary happening. Well, suddenly, their landline phone rings and the number on the caller ID shows no name and only the number 000-000-000. My granddad jokes this joke that he does when he gets a weird call from some number he doesn't recognize and says, I don't know anyone named 000000000, and let the answering machine get it. So a minute later, it shows that the ominous number left a message on the answering machine and we play it. As the message plays, there's about 10 seconds of static noise, like someone has a bad connection, and then it stops and we hear a woman's voice say, I love you. And we all immediately turned and looked at each other and didn't say a word. A few more seconds of static followed those words and the message ended. We all recognized the voice as belonging to my great-grandmother. What adds to my belief that it was her was that she had this weird thing where she would never say the words, I love you, to anyone. She was a sweet lady, but something about those words she would just never say, even if you said them to her first. So I believe she regretted that and needed to pass that message along to my granddad. Nothing else has happened since, but I will always remember that experience, end quote. So Salty Panda 93 basically figured it out for himself. The most likely reason why this happened. The static is just interference from whatever energy the spirit chose to use in order to be able to get the message through, and isn't all that unusual. And in fact, it's very common in messages left on the phone, on the answer machine, and in other places too. Guys, think of EVP recordings that you get on purpose with a special recorder and how that sounds before you clean it up, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. That gosh darn static that you so desperately need, but that makes it so you can't figure out a freaking thing that's coming through afterwards until you clean it up. So there's another option here too, though, that I was initially thinking of, and that's if she didn't say it in life, it is unlikely she would be saying it in death unless she had that really deep sense of regret, but spirits don't usually cross over with regret, right? Maybe she was doing it for them, knowing they needed to hear it. I don't know. It's a little far-fetched for me, but I can see why someone who doesn't know any better would think that. And if that gave him comfort, I'm glad, and I hope he doesn't see this. You see, like I said, spirits that cross over do not have regrets, so to speak, just things they wish they had learned or that they specifically came here to learn or do but never did. But they know not to be bothered by any of it because when and if they're ready, they're just going to do it again and work those same things and lessons into their new life chart in the hopes of achieving it the next time around. I was wondering, and this is just a thought, if maybe a demonic entity was messing with the family there. But it seemed there seems to have been no other activity related to this event or as far as we know anything else surrounding the family. So it's highly unlikely because when those types of entities make an appearance, it's definitely for a reason other than to leave a sweet message that brings the family closure. Another one from Reddit, this one from user Electric Monk, is similar but deals with his recent grandfather. Before the grandfather had passed away, he had lived with the Electric Monk's mother. Most likely she was his daughter, but the source material doesn't specify that fact. But he was sent away to a nursing home not long before he passed away. However, it seems like the old man really wanted to get a message to his family at least one more time after he died. The Electric Monk explained the experience by saying, quote, yesterday as I was getting ready for work, she handed me the phone and told me to listen to a message on it. Tell me who you think that sounds like, she said. It was just a man saying hello, and then a few seconds later, hello again. Simple, but it was unmistakably the voice of my grandfather. He had a very distinctive voice. It freaked me out. It wasn't like a questioning, are you there type of hello, but like a greeting. Hello, hello. It sounded slightly distorted. I want to say metallic, question mark, in a way, but was clear. It gave me the chills. My mom said she had been watching TV when the phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, so she let it go to voicemail. She heard the voice and froze, and then a second later heard two soft bangs from the lower level. I was freaked out about this all night. My dad wants to write it off as a scammer. I don't think it was. I got serious chills when I heard it, and I don't get chills from anything, end quote. So just a friendly grandfather letting his family know he was okay and that he was with them, apparently based on the knocking sounds they heard in real time as well. I think it's sweet when spirits do this, but it does take some effort on their part, and they have to have passed without much unfinished business or stress in their lives in order to be able to immediately do something like that too. As far as scammers, I mean, I'm not mocking this guy's dad because I get it. I know a lot of non-believers, but A scammer? Was the grandfather like some famous person? Like who would do that? Knowing it could possibly cause pain and bring up all of these lower vibrational emotions. It's not going to be a friend. It's not going to be a family member. I don't know. That just is weird. I don't know. It's such a skeptic thing though, guys. And you guys know how I feel about the skeptics. So I got to make fun of y'all as much as I can, you skeptics, because you're always making fun of me. Yeah, that's right. So like I was saying, in order for them to do something like that and use that much energy and effort, they had to have passed without much unfinished business or stress. Otherwise, they go through an isolation on the other side where, depending on the trauma, stress, unfinished business, etc. that they're dealing with, that they passed over with, they are kept until their soul recovers. So this should have also told them that he was doing well and able to enjoy his afterlife in peace immediately upon crossing over. I think that may be why we don't hear of immediate visits, whether physical or through electronics, as much as we used to in this field, honestly, even though it does happen. And that's because we tend to put so much stress on ourselves when we pass away. We can't help but have a lot of it still clinging to us. It honestly depends though, guys. And I can't say one way or another, like what is most common, because it's different for every case. I found an instance on a site called Ghost Village that came from a witness named Margaret Hawk, who lived in Knoxville, Iowa, not Tennessee, Iowa, when she had her experience where she said she was contacted in this way by her deceased father. Margaret had stepped out of the house just seconds before the call came in, according to the time on the answer machine, and she just managed to miss it. She thought it was very eerie, but said things would get even eerier. I was just to point out before we go any further, because she also acknowledged exactly what I was about to say in this one, that a person, when they pick up the phone immediately and they hear constant static and rumblings, they'll hang up without a second thought. So the timing doesn't really seem so eerie to me. And in fact, I think most of the spirits who reach out or communicate in this way know the best way to do it is to leave a message so that they don't get hung up on because of all the static and background noise. The energy it takes to do something like leaving a voicemail brings along with it. Anyway, Margaret said, quote, I was in such deep mourning after my father passed that when I would cry at night, my back would arch up off the bed. I've dealt with people dying many times since I am a registered nurse. I accepted death as a part of life. I knew that the patients had an afterlife, but when it was my dad, it was different. When I listened to the message several times, I could smell his distinct body scent. Sometime later, my doorbell chime began playing the Westminster chimes, which it is incapable of doing. My dad was a jokester. He had my husband and I running all over the house trying to figure it out. My husband kept pushing the doorbell to try and make it do it again, but it only happened when Dad wanted to have some fun. I know I heard his voice under the wet sounds, but others are dumbfounded by the recording. They can't hear his voice. I believe that my father had to use a lot of energy just so he could call and comfort me that he's still around. Of course, I still miss him, but I talk to him as if he were right next to me. He proved to me that he really does still exist, end quote. I tell you guys that all the time. Talk to your deceased loved ones as though they're right next to you, because if they're not in that moment, they will be once you start talking so they can listen. So the dad probably either couldn't for whatever reason or didn't want to actually show himself, but he let her smell his familiar scent while she listened to the recording. He also played a practical joke, which is another way you can be sure your loved one fully crossed over and is at peace when they make and take the time to do things just like that, just to let you know that they're there. Since she was in such deep mourning, I'm sure he knew that although she thought she would have been ready to see him appear right there in front of her, he knew better, being able to read her energy while in spirit, and he did the next best thing so that she would know it was really him. Let's move now to a fairly well-known and well-circulated instance that happened to a man named George Meek. It happened in 1994, and the reason it's so well-known and widely circulated is because George is, or at least he was at the time, a paranormal investigator. So he was fully equipped to deal with something just like this, and in fact, it more than likely helped his career in research very much, provided he looked more closely at and into the whole thing, the whole occurrence. George said that he received a message from a deceased colleague named Konstantin Rodiv. Both Konstantin and George had not only been paranormal investigators, but they specifically investigated the phenomenon of EVP recordings. That's when spirits of the deceased and other entities' voices are caught on audio tape, as most of us know by now. Now we have special recorders for this, but I don't know if they existed back in the 90s. And I remember people using plain old tape recorders to try and get spirits to speak and communicate with them. These two men made it their life's work and mission to gather as many disembodied voices on tape and prove for once and for all that the afterlife does exist. Obviously, they didn't meet their goal because we still have, and I guess we always will have, skeptics and non-believers, no matter how much evidence we present from this community. They were said to have more than a few recordings that were said to be groundbreaking for the time and throughout the community, but their research died when Constantine died in 1974. 20 years later, in 1994, George Meeks claims that he started receiving all sorts of electronic communication from his long-deceased friend and colleague. Phone calls, emails, messages on the answering machines, and even faxes were all ways in which he claims to have been contacted by the spirit of the dead Constantine. I personally think it is awesome that someone who dedicated their life to the research of EVPs and trying to prove their validity in this community and to the world at large would come back and communicate through those same things which he was studying and investigating for most of his life. You can find the messages on the internet if you look them up because George Meeks recorded all of them successfully and he or someone else uploaded them for posterity. Yes. What do you guys make of the cases that I just listed for you all? What do you think personally of EVPs in general? And are you a skeptic or a believer of the afterlife in general? Where do you fit it into the grand scheme of things regarding the paranormal community? Yeah, those are real brain benders there, huh? But I want to know. A lot of you have been sending comments about experiences you've had or asking questions about certain things that have been or are happening to you in the comments. Please email them to me so I can use them for listener encounters if you'll allow me to, or if you just want to talk personally and privately. Many of you have contacted me through text, comments, or email asking me to talk about life as a medium, to talk about the spirits and how it all works and things that I do and things that I do on a daily basis. I spent my entire life shoving that down and not talking about it. And I would love to talk about it. And I would love to tell you guys every single thing there is to know. But you got to help me out by giving me specific questions. And I'll do it in a shorts format. And I'll do it in a live stream format. And I'll do it in a video format as well. I needed ideas for shorts. And a lot of you guys were like, talk about that. Duh, you're a medium. Talk about it. Yeah, I need to start with questions. I need to build myself up to it. So if you guys want to hear about it, if you guys want to help me out, send me some questions like about maybe the afterlife or how spirits do this, that, the other thing, and any questions you guys have. And if I can answer them, I certainly will. Please do that for me. I love hearing about your guys' encounters and things that are happening to y'all, but when you put it in the comments, I lose sight of it. Even if I screenshot it, sometimes I end up accidentally deleting it, or I don't know. So just email them to me and I'll be able to better coordinate them and be able to address them and talk about them, whether privately or publicly, depending on what you choose. Let me know in the email if it's okay to use it as a public story or on a public forum. It absolutely thrills me to see the spirit realm so effectively affecting so many people now, more so than ever before. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed hanging out with each other, if you attended the premiere. Please spread the love by sharing this video and make sure your notification bell is turned on. As most of you know, there has been a major change to the schedule. For the past 2.5 years, at least, I've been doing live intuitive oracle on Wednesday nights at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time.
We're not doing them anymore on Fridays.
As of right now, when this video is coming out, they are Friday nights at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, and I think it's going to end up being every other Friday, every other Saturday. But on Friday night, so 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, come on into the channel and see myself and Ghostdragonzw. I am going to give you a one-card intuitive oracle reading to bring you in, tell you what your next week or two is going to be about, maybe talk about something that's going on in your life. Come on in by 10 o'clock Eastern time so that you can get your name put on the list if you want a reading. Personals, 7 to 10 cards for the month if you reach out through email, text, or in the comments. Only $20.
I'll wait
to my PayPal or Cash App. So hit me up about that. Don't forget Friday nights. Please, live intuitive oracle. That is my biggest.
Yeah. Okay, much better. Now, Fridays will be just paranormal talk like we did last time. And it'll be every Friday. Me on Wednesdays. A lot going on here. Wow. So that's why my Wednesdays were like, I was saying that every time if we don't stream on Friday, I'll stream on Wednesday. Well, now we're streaming every Friday, and then her video on Tuesdays now at 10:15. I'm gonna leave Fridays up in the air, so just watch. I may come on, I may not. Just Wednesday, a lot going on. So right now Wednesdays have been kind of crazy. So I'm gonna try to do this Wednesday, but I can't make no promises. It all depends on him. But Saturdays, GemmaJadeYT replays will always stay constant unless something happens and I can't be here. But I will keep doing the Saturday replays as long as she wants me to. So yeah, there you go. We got some good ideas up for Fridays too. Some subjects, some interviews, some fun. I may be going to school soon, so I won't be able to catch many lives in the next few months. We'll go to school. That's important. No, you can't go to school. You have to be here, watch everybody's live stream. I know you just watch a lot. You going back for art, or what are you going back to school for? May I ask? It's always good to go to school. Business and accounting. Actually, that's what my ex used to do. Business and accounting. She's basically an accountant. She works for a couple good companies. Now she works from home for a healthcare. So, which she likes a lot better. Now she don't have to run. It gives her and her new husband more time. Plus, she takes care of the kid, a set of grandkids too. So, so it's always active over there. That's good. Sorry we haven't had a lot of time to talk. It's been nuts. And I've been sleeping when I can, which is unusual. I don't take naps. I never could. But it's like last night, after I did trick-or-treaters and everybody got settled in, I cleaned and I do a lot of work at night when everybody's crashed. That way I can get stuff done, especially with the old man. And during the days, it's just been either dealing with him, trying to get him moving and doing stuff, keeping him occupied, or trying to get the house done. It's been crazy. I need an upgrade too. But it never hurts to upgrade in education. No sweat with that. I encourage it. And there's Mr. Andrew. I'm sure Vixen's still in here. She may be watching. Latra's probably here, watching, eating, making dinner. Chris was in here too. He was feeling kind of rough. I told him to sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm sure if he's here, he's here. If he's not, he's not. Nobody says anything, so. But yeah, I need an upgrade too. But not as much of my body. I'm getting my body back slowly. I mean, I can't do nothing about the tremors and Tourette's and all that crap, but I'm starting to feel a human again. But he helps. I've been so active lately. Like I take a little break in the afternoon, and then I take another break in the evening after dinner, and then I'd work until my body gives out. But I've actually been, like last night, I was actually in bed before midnight, which is unusual for me, even though it was up every 15 minutes. I had everything off and trying to chill my brain out, which I suggest that we all need to do right now. Recharging is going to be important because it's going to get crazy. Try not to be too loud because, like I said, he's sleepy. I was surprised he was up moving around. That's why I had to get up. I heard him out there moving around. I can tell him between jobs because he walks with the cane. My partner is a hoarder, so I just gave up on keeping things maintained. Actually, he's gotten real good about it. In fact, he's been real good about helping me clean up and clean out. He just likes to keep motors and stuff. All of his hoarding's like tools and stuff like that. Some of it, be better off in a museum. So, but yeah, it's hard to keep things when you gotta. Yeah, I know somebody that knows that story all too well. It's your dog. If he could, he would have an engine on always in the living room. Yeah, that'd probably be my dad in the day. He's not so bad now, but I can see my dad doing something like that. No, he's pretty reserved, so. But I've seen him do some crazy stuff in his day, so. But yeah, a lot of his tools, engine parts. I've got 3 lawnmowers sitting out that he's working on. And because he's been feeling so rough lately, they're still sitting out there. So I guess I'm going to have to go out there and have him sit with me. It's just getting so shaky. I mean, he is 92 years old. He gets so shaky. It gets hard for him to use his hands. I feel bad because he loves still sitting out there and tinkering with them. It's just getting the small stuff done on him. Oh, you rent? Yeah, you're going to have that out. But I'm lucky. You're lucky you got one like that, though. Because one place, I used to be a maintenance man, groundskeeper. And one of the places I worked at, I kept it maintained. Me and the maintenance guy did a heck of a job keeping the place up. It looked great, kept it painted, made sure all the apartments were always clean. People left. Very rarely did you have somebody even got evicted. It was very rarely to go into a mess. But after me and him left, those people sold the place, and you could tell the people that own it now don't care. They barely keep it up. Looks bad. Shame I go by and I tell Dad, it's a shame that place used to look so good. Had flowers growing everywhere. So yeah, I can see that coming from the landlord. Now you have to forget about yourself. I got a bat. You need a bat? So it gets out of control fast. Yeah. Like I said, I know somebody that right here on this channel that knows exactly what you're talking about. Exactly what you're talking about. If it's at the same extreme as hers. But I don't want to get too personal. She does pretty much turn around. Yeah. Yeah, you should. And I tell you what, it's hard. Here, that's what you got. You either got slumlords or you got landlords. Landlords are the ones that care. Yeah, they get a little picky about the money. But a good landlord will work with you in most parts because they really don't want to have to turn their apartment over. So a lot of them will try to work with you if you go talk to them. But yeah, I get the cleanliness thing. And if you respect them enough to get that, you got it. Oh, your dad's also. Oh, my stepdad is also a landlord. Oh, yeah. We used to rent the house that me and the ex lived in with the kids for a while. And my dad, mom, and dad rented it before we moved in. Well, grandma lived there. My grandparents lived there. Then they passed. And then my brother Tim rented the place from him. And then his wife got transferred and he retired. So they moved up to Minnesota for a while and they were all over the place. But anyways, we took over the place for a while. Always the place was cursed because everybody that lived there always had a problem. But when they bought the house, it was called a mini farm. When they bought the house, they borrowed $200 from my mom and dad to put down on the house. It was like, holy crap, something like that. Oh yeah, most landlords will tell you that too, and I've seen it, so I know where that's coming from. Yeah, it's basically the same thing as squatters. You know, that's a lot of problems with these guys trying to get squatters out once they establish themselves. Oh yeah, and they usually do. Basically, a person is using squatting techniques. They go in, they pay the first month rent, and then they squat after that. And good luck getting them out. It takes a while, a lot of patience, but you'll get them out. He hasn't had tenants like that for a while. He screens them now. Oh, yeah, and that's probably why. Carried a 12-bolt diff Camaro up the stairs into my apartment. We built in a spare bedroom. I know guys have done that. I knew a couple college guys. When in my younger days, they were going to college. They were mechanics. Actually, they were going to like a trucking school or something. And they literally was rebuilding an engine in one of their spare bedrooms, piece by piece. It was pretty wild. Just watch them get it built, though. They got it built. I guess they had a hell of a time getting it out of the house, but they got it out and it diff. Back in the you'd call a carpet salesman to come out for a demo. A differential. And oh, by the way, Al, I loved your posts. The blooper one's kind of funny. The other two are cool. Very atmospheric. I played the owl one for my dad. He liked that one. Oh, this is nice. I can relax to this. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, I did a couple for TikToks just for the giggles. Yeah, I showed him the one with the. He giggled a lot when he saw the dog man dancing with the ballerina dress. He was like, "Come on, man." But he's like me. He's amazed by this stuff. But yeah, it's like that guy that popped in. Says the cover cracks me up because there's people actually in TikTok and on YouTube that thinks Gemma's AI, and it cracks me up. Curious because I was watching an engineering video on how differentials work. Rolatra is the man. I'm not. It's sad. Like I said, my dad had 4 boys, and not one of us was mechanics like him. Well, Kevin was a little bit. .56 posi, 22 plate. Also, I truck has a centrifugal locker. Got to be careful not to shock it too much. Whatever. Talking lingo I know nothing about. Tell me, God. Yeah, I'll probably call it at 2. I'm going to try to get up and get him out of the house for a little bit tomorrow morning. Then come back and work on the yard. Hopefully the leaves dries out and I can finish them up. Things stayed pretty wet because it's so chilly. My partner is kind of, his parents owned a parts store, so he worked for them and got to know a lot. Oh, that's right. You said stuff. One wheel spins, weights with compressed the clutch back. Yeah, I got a rattle in my car now, and I got to figure out if a bracket didn't come off my muffler or if it's the catalytic converter. Something rattling and it keeps going. So first I was like, oh no, nope. Maybe it was spring or something, but something up underneath, I'm pretty sure. His name is Kevin. I don't want to keep calling him partner. Didn't he come in one night? Weren't you guys both on here when you first started coming in here? And if he's watching, hi, Kevin. My little brother's named Kevin. You know that? Yep. His name was Kevin, too. Yeah, I think he was here one time. Yeah. He's not here. Okay. They might not need a converter since the EPA has killed the emissions rule. Yeah, I know. That's what made Dad happy. Because, well, if we have to take the converter off, we won't have to worry about them getting all iffy about it. So a lot of times they don't check it anyway. So that's probably what I'm going to end up doing, just taking it off. I may have no choice. I'm pretty sure whatever it is, it's up around because it's right up underneath the car, right up between the front and the back seat. I know that's where the rattles come from. I just haven't been able to get up underneath there. But he's got the tools to do it, so I can be able to jack it up good and high and climb up underneath there. Depends on if your computer will flag downstream O2 error. I don't know what you're talking about. He's off milling out the Cadillac for that aren't good folks. Oh, jeez. He's out miling out the Cadillac on people that aren't good folks. Oh, that's fun. I heard that story too. Oh, geez, really? Trash a good car like that. I like the older Cadillacs. A lot of the new ones have problems. I had a friend, very close friend, who bought a Cadillac. A year after he bought the new Cadillac, went to turn on the back defrosters and the whole window shattered. Took him forever to get a hold of somebody to fix it. But I'll tell you what, man, you put that baby, you get that on the highway and get to cruising, drop it in cruise and just lean back, and it's like driving a speedboat. Smooth all the way. By having the battery out and exposed for a loose tool to touch to come out. Oh, fun. The old caddies with 429 and 5 were some rear boats. Yeah, this one was a newer one. But I think it had a 429 in it. I will say it drove like a boat. I mean, it drove like a luxury cruise boat. When you get that baby on the highway on open road and drop it down, it cruise. Because we'd go to the Indiana games, Ohio State Indiana games, and I'd always have to drive back because he was always too drunk to drive. So I'd drive back, and that's the one thing I liked about that car. I just sat back, dropped it in. Once I hit the main stretch, 70, I just dropped it into cruise. About 72 miles. I'm not a speeder, so I'd go maybe about 70, 72, drop it in cruise, lean back, get my coffee, drink my coffee, just make the road. Oh, 90, the rear Vieras are nice. I had a friend that he still has it. He loves that thing. I think his was a 70. And I know he still has it. I've seen him drive it. Seen him driving to work a couple of days ago, in fact. Passed him in by the gas station. Those Rivieras probably. You know what? What was that? Trying to think of this car my dad had. We had a station wagon. Yeah, he was a Ford guy for the longest time. Oh, the Ford Tempos. He bought a Ford Tempo. Little box car. Plain looking car. But I'll tell you what, that little thing for a little six-banger, man. It lasted him a while. I wish I'd bought 2007, 028 Monte Carlo SS last year. Oh, man. Sound like muscle cars. I felt bad because there's my dad and this old man around the corner, the little ass really of the neighborhood generation. And he was driving one of those new Camaros. He had bought a new Camaro, and he's the same age as my dad. Well, I saw him walking the other day, and I asked, "Hey, man, how come you're not driving?" He goes, "I can't drive anymore. They took it away, took my license away." And I go, "Why?" And he goes, "I backed into a pole." I said, "Oh, you trashed your Camaro?" And he goes, "I didn't trash it, just done it back." Right. 2008. I know you meant. I was being sarcastic. G-Body, man, late 80s. Yeah. '80s was an interesting time for cars. Actually, the '60s, '70s. Muscle cars were muscle cars. A friend of mine had this was 1949 Newport, New Yorker, and it had a V8 Hemi in it. It's 3 on a tree. That baby, we'd go out and drive that thing. My dad's telling him, "Don't you ruin that car." And he'd come over and drive it and show it to my dad. And my dad was like, "You take care." He'd come over and had my dad work on it a couple times for him. And Dad says, "You watch, he'll ruin that car." I said, "Yeah, Dan probably will ruin that car." And I heard about after we graduated, he drove around for a few years, took it to college. I guess he just drove the crap out of it, never checked the oil, and burned the engine up. My dad was furious when he found that because he could just sold it to me. I would have took care of it. This Cadillac is an expensive fix. Yeah, most Cadillacs usually are not cheap to fix. Yeah, 1992 about a SSIE supercharged, not bad, not optical. So I'm not. When you guys start talking that stuff, I get lost. I'll tell you what, Gemma's little boy, man, he looks at a car and he can tell you what year it is, what's underneath the engine. I was like, holy crap, dude. Impressive. His mother is nuts for buying it and thinking he can afford to fix it. Oh, man. Sorry, it's real dry here even after the rain. And Dad's got the heat cranked up, so I'm all drying out. All right, well, I'm going to get ready to call this. I'm glad you guys are talking. Yeah, it's dry. Well, it rained, and I thought it rained for like almost 24 hours, but it just wasn't dry. No. Now, the leaves, I've been trying to clean up the leaves, and they're still all wet and stuff. But you go out there, and it's damp, and it's cold. And then you come in here, and it's hot, and it's dry. And it's like immediately, just like humidity, it's not really humidity. I just dry out instantly. I hate that because I get that dry, itchy, and it just drives me nuts. Gonna watch something on Amazon tablet. Yep. You have a good night, Latra. I will probably text you sometime tomorrow and let you know what's going on. I hope you're well. Everybody else that's watching, please have a wonderful week. I will be here Tuesday nights for Gemma's upload. I don't know which one she's doing. She may have told me. It's been crazy. So be here Tuesday, 10 o'clock, 10:15 for her premiere upload. Then we will be here. I'll try to be here Friday. As long as nothing's going on Wednesday, because it's been crazy. I'll try to be here Wednesday. Usually I try to wait till 11 or 12, at least 11 to come on. But if it may be earlier, it may be later. It may not be at all. So always know that Wednesday's kind of flippy-floppy. But if I can be here, I'm going to be here. But I will be here on Saturdays. We will be here Friday at 7:15. So I hope you see us then. Everybody have a wonderful night. The rest of the night and good mornings. And enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy the beginning of the week. Life's crazy right now for everybody. So stay strong, stay positive. Got faith. Keep it. And much love to all to you. Much love to you all. And I will see you folks on the flip side